A lot of critics of the ICC argue that it's very biased towards the leaders of developing countries. And so if you look at a map of the cases that have been heard to date, they are predominantly African cases. And there comes the argument that this is a European body, or it's a body that's swayed by the values of a European kind of system of ethics and maybe American, and that it really doesn't favor developing African countries.
Well, I think that's a bit of a misnomer, and it's a convenient argument that's used without any basis in fact. There are 168 members of the Rome Statute, 34 of which are from Africa, the highest percentage from any other parts of the world. The highest percentage of countries that commit to the Rome Statute are in Africa.
That's interesting.
There are 8 of the 9 cases that have gone before the ICC have been African cases. That is absolutely true. But let's draw down a little bit below that. 4 of those cases were actually referred to the ICC by the countries themselves. 2 of those cases were referred by the United Nations Security Council, in which all of the African members of the Security Council at that time voted in favor of the referral. In fact, South Africa was a member of the Security Council at the time the Libya matter was referred to the ICC, and we supported that referral. There are only 2 cases where the ICC prosecutor has initiated an investigation on itself. So this argument that the ICC is inherently biased against African countries has no basis in fact.
Although I suppose, it would be quite nice to see some other very pertinent cases of human rights violations beyond the continent being heard too.
Absolutely, and I think it's fundamental, and what we need to be doing, and what the responsible thing to do would be to grow the stature of the International Criminal Court and to try and get more and more countries to sign up to it and to be bound by its provisions rather than to walk away, especially as we're walking away with no other mechanism in place. So we're giving impunity to those that fundamentally undermine human rights, gross violations of human rights, torture, and crimes against humanity.
Yeah. Interesting, I saw that the head of the ICC, who's Senegalese, is holding a press conference in Dakar at 3 this afternoon, and he's going to address this call by Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir for other African states to join this trend set by South Africa, which you are about to try and scupper by going to the Constitutional Court. Just on that though, I mean, interesting to hear a spokesperson for the presidency in Sudan saying that the ICC targets African countries and it never targets European states, also mentioning Israel there. I know that Georgia, a matter of human rights violations in Georgia has been heard, and there have been investigations into what happened in Afghanistan with American troops there. So nothing yet in the court itself, but if you do dig a little bit deeper, there are other cases that are at least tentatively kind of looked into.
Yeah, the Georgia case was referred to the ICC earlier this year. There are other investigations ongoing, and I think it's important to say that the ICC is not a perfect body, but it's the best body that we have at the moment to deal with these gross violations of human rights, with issues of war crimes and genocide. And we need to build on the capacity of the ICC to have a greater presence across the globe and to deal with these abuses when they occur, wherever they occur. And we accept the weakness of the ICC, but South Africa's withdrawal from the ICC will do nothing to turn the tide against the abuse of human rights. And I think that's really the point that we need to be. We need to be demonstrating our support for the victims of human rights abuses and not for the perpetrators. And our withdrawal from the Rome Statute gives succor to the perpetrators of genocide.
Yeah. If we go back to last year in the African Union Summit, which is where this all really first came to a head with Omar al-Bashir here on a visit for that summit in Sandton. And I remember quite vividly being on a panel about gross sexual assaults and rapes that occurred in places like Darfur as a weapon of war, a weapon of kind of, warfare. And astounding that in the same hall hours later was al-Bashir and leaders of his ilk who some people would argue very strongly advocated for that sort of behavior and tactic as a weapon of war. Now, Michael Masuta, our Minister of Justice, said that one of the difficulties we face as long as we're still a signatory on the Rome Statute is it impairs and retards our ability to negotiate with African leaders and try and reach peaceful settlements, and that basically we become a tool of regime change, because if we extradite Omar al-Bashir while he's here at the AU summit, then there's a vacuum back in Sudan, and then who becomes the leader? What do you make of his argument on that front?
Well, I think it's a very self-serving, weak argument. I mean, the issue is that membership of the ICC and signatory of the Rome Statute does not prevent us from playing a role as a peace broker in any of these conflicts, which South Africa has played an incredible role in South Sudan and in the Darfur region as a mediator. And that has been, whilst we have been part of the ICC. So I don't see how that really makes any sense. Yes, we must continue to play that role. We have a responsibility to do that through multilateral organizations, through SADC, the AU, and so on, to play those roles. But we also have a responsibility on humanity in general to ensure that those who are perpetrators of gross violations of human rights are brought to book, and that there is accountability for those actions and not impunity.